Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Hackney Council's Planning Subcommittee for this evening. My name is Councillor Steve Race. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. This meeting will be recorded and is being live streamed on YouTube. Councillors taking part and voting this evening are present here in the council chamber. If any councillors are joining the meeting remotely, they do so as an observer and they'll not be able to participate in the discussion and the vote for any planning application on the agenda. The capacity for the council chamber is back to its maximum, including public gallery. There's no one in there at the moment. I welcome all residents who are here to participate or to observe the proceedings. For those participating in the meeting remotely via Google Meets, the virtual meeting technology does have a chat function. However, please only use this to raise IT-related issues. As chair of the subcommittee, I will not be monitoring it. In the event of an internet outage, we'll adjourn the meeting and then come back and start again. I will first introduce the members of the planning subcommittee as follows. We have Councillor, Councillor Ali Sadek. We have Councillor Jessica Webb, who is the Vice Chair. We have Councillor John Narcos, Councillor Sarah Young, and Councillor Michael Levy as well. Welcome to the members. Next, I'll introduce you to the council officers present in the chamber. I've got Natalie Broughton to my left, Head of Planning and Building Control. I have Gareth Sykes, Governance Officer, to my right. We also have Sam Woodhead, Planning Legal Officer, sat with officers over to my left as well. Some of you present in the room will have contacted the Governance Officer in advance of this meeting to register to speak. Objectors to the applications and representatives for the applicant are also present in the room. Before we continue, I just want to briefly outline how this meeting will proceed. We will hear each planning application in turn summarised by the planning officer. We will then hear a 5-minute statement from the objectors, followed by a 5-minute statement from the applicant. If there's more than one speaker from an applicant or an objector, they will have to agree amongst themselves beforehand how they'll split that 5 minutes speaking time. Members of the planning subcommittee will then be free to ask questions, the planning officer, objectors, or the applicant. It's my role as chair of the planning subcommittee to ensure that members have all the information they need to make a decision, that objectors and applicants have the opportunity to set out their case, and that the meeting runs properly. I will not be taking any contributions from the floor. This is a meeting in public, but it's not a public meeting. You must have given notice to the governance officer before the meeting if you wish to speak, and the deadline for registering to speak was 4 p.m. yesterday, and the speakers list is now closed. Subcommittee members are not representing either their wards or their political parties. The subcommittee will make its decisions on the basis of site visits they've made, what we've read in the published application report, and of course what we hear this evening. We must make any decision on an application in accordance with the Council's development plan, including the Council's local plan LP33 and the London Plan 2021, unless relevant material planning considerations indicate otherwise. I emphasise that subcommittee members should not take into account or discuss non-material planning matters. When taking a decision, members should not have allowed themselves to prejudge any application prior to this meeting. Similarly, if a member has any interest relating to an application on the meeting agenda, they must consider whether that interest ought to be disclosed at the beginning, and where appropriate, they must withdraw from the meeting while the application is discussed and voted upon. When we've finished our deliberations on a planning application on the agenda, we'll then vote on the recommendation as set out in the published application report. When the decision is made, that is normally the end of the matter for this subcommittee. The applicant may appeal our decision and objectors may seek legal redress. I advise you seek legal advice in either case. And then finally, depending on how the meeting this evening proceeds, we may take a short break at 8 p.m. We'll now move to the published meeting agenda, beginning with apologies for absence.
Chair, and for those present in the room and watching the meeting, we have 2 apologies, Councillor Joseph and Councillor Loudett Scott. And obviously, as alluded to earlier, Councillor Potter, I understand, is running late.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Councillor Desmond as well. Declarations of interest, any from the committee? None? Okay. As far as I'm aware, we've not had any proposals or questions referred to the subcommittee of the Council's monitoring officer.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can we approve the minutes from the 6th of July? Agreed. Thank you. And the 27th of July. Agreed. Great. Thank you very much. In that case, we're moving on to substantive items on the agenda. We move to item 5, Firefighter Avenue, and it's being led by Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the site is due north of Firefighter Avenue, which has been annexed from Firefighter Avenue. Firefighter Avenue is a two-story end of terrace property, which has a three-story rear addition and a single-story rear extension. The property is in use as flats. To the north is a two-story residential building, 1 Old Hill Street. And to the east, 3 Filer Avenue, which has a single-story rear extension and a sycamore tree in the rear garden facing the site. In terms of the principal and land use, the principal increase in the housing stock is considered acceptable, given that the site is located in a predominantly residential area. The principle of annexing rear gardens to provide new residential units is supported by the Conservation, Urban and Sustainability team, as there are similar developments which have been granted planning permission, of which there is no impact on the street scene or conservation area, and no impact on neighbours are not considered substantial and harmful. In terms of the proposal, the proposed development seeks to erect a two-story, including basement building on a strip of land adjacent to the rear of Firefighter Avenue in order to provide a one-bedroom self-contained residential unit. The development will occupy the full width of the site and have a flat roof with a height of 3 meters from ground level. A light well will be provided at basement level in order to provide natural light to the basement living spaces. In terms of materials, the development will be built from London stock brick with a Flemish bond, aluminium frame windows and aluminium door. In terms of the design, the development incorporates an attractive modern design which incorporates a mix of use of bricks in the design, such as embossed yellow London stock and yellow stock perforated Flemish bond. This has been improved since the previous design incorporated window panels and louvers. The proposal also includes no rear openings, but light and outlook is served via an internal courtyard and 2 front windows and roof lights. The basement would have a light well which provides sufficient light to the bedroom. The overall height and bulk of the new structure is subordinate to both the host building and the adjoining building, 1 Old Street, and given its single story above the ground appearance, the proposal will still maintain an open character and retain views to rear gardens, which are important features of the conservation area. The photo, yeah. So this is a picture showing the existing site with the tree at number 3. To the right is 1 Old Hill Street. As such, the proposed event is assessed to cause less than substantial harm to the significance of the designated heritage assets. This is considered to be adequately justified, minimized and mitigated as the harm is outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme. All materials we propose are high quality and be secured by condition. And overall, there are no objections from the Conservation, Urban Design and Sustainability team. In terms of the existing tree at number 3 Firefighter Avenue, it's a sycamore tree, and there has been a tree report which confirms the tree is decaying and not worthy of retention. Therefore, there is no requirement to replace the tree as the land is out of the applicant's control. And there are no objections raised from the council's tree officer. In terms of the standard of accommodation, yeah, that's it, yeah. In terms of accommodation, the accommodation meets the technical space standards, national technical space standards for duplex flats, which requires 58 square meters over 2 floors, and the proposal is 66.8 square meters. The bedroom would be located at basement level and would marginally miss the average daylight factor for the amount of light into rooms, which requires 1% and is 0.8%. There was a daylight report submitted quite late, which provided this evidence, but unfortunately we cannot share with you because it's quite late. Although the outlook is limited to a light well, bedrooms are not considered as important as the kitchen living rooms, which requires more light and outlook. The kitchen living room is at ground floor and provides good sized space, which have dual aspect windows together with roof lights and therefore receives sufficient daylight. There is a small amenity space provided at 5.7 square meters, which is acceptable. So therefore, on balance, the benefits outweigh the harm providing a new residential development to meet the housing needs and tidies up a vacant site. And overall, the development provides a reachable size standard layout, which be in compliance with the London Plan Standards and the London Housing SPG. In terms of affordable housing contribution, the application will not provide affordable housing contribution as this is a self-built. There is no requirement under national policy to provide such a contribution. London Plan and the NPPF only requires major developments. So therefore, this will be a self-build and there is no affordable contributions required. In terms of transport, one cycle parking is proposed in a courtyard, and although two would normally be required, due to site constraints and shared with the refuse and bins, an additional cycle could not be accommodated, which there are no objections from traffic and transport. To encourage active travel and sustainable transport, whilst reducing reliance on the private motor vehicle, the new development will be car-free, except for blue badge holders, and this is subject to a legal agreement. And finally, there'll be a condition is required for a construction management plan, and this will be secured by condition. In terms of sustainability measures to reduce carbon emissions, solar panels, if you show that on the roof, please, are proposed at roof level.
Don't have the roof.
Yeah, it's on the, should be there.
Just carry on, Michael.
Yeah, solar panels are proposed on the roof level. Measures will be introduced to reduce carbon. Other measures will be introduced to reduce carbon measures. Therefore, the development will require a £1,000 carbon offset contribution as per the requirements in the 2020 planning obligation SPD by way of legal agreement. In terms of biodiversity, there is a green roof proposed, but the green roof is a cedar mat, which is not acceptable. So therefore, we have conditioned it to provide between an 80 to 150 millimeter substrate depth green roof. And due to the site constraints, no further biodiversity can be provided. In terms of flood risk, as the site is not in a critical drainage area, but that's a high risk of surface water flooding. As a proposal involves creating a habitable basement habitable rooms within the basement, it's essential that development is protected against flooding. So therefore, a flood risk assessment would be required, and this is secured by condition. In terms of refuse, this will be located within the courtyard and enclosed in timber slats. And sufficient refuse has been provided, and there are no objections on waste management. In terms of amenity, there are three properties to consider. Number 1, Old Hill Street, number 3, Firefighter Avenue, and number 5, Firefighter Avenue. Number 1, Old Street is the building, could you show them? Yeah, it's a 2-story building. It's much taller than the proposed building, and it has no windows on the flank elevation. So therefore, there will be no amenity impact to this property. In terms of number 3, Firefighter Avenue, just go to, yeah. This property has a single-story re-extension with patio glazed doors, as you can see on the photos there, and has substantial glazing. And there are 2 further windows, 2 side windows facing number 1, Firefighter Avenue. As you can see there, although the image is not the greatest, but as you can see, there's 2 further windows. Given its wide open views from the rear windows and the additional double aspect windows, it's not considered there will be a loss of light or overbearing from the new building. In terms of number 5 Filing Avenue, number 5 Filing Avenue has a single-story re-extension with glazed patio doors, as you can see on the photos, and a side window, and this will receive adequate light. There is sufficient distance from the rear extension to the new building, which is 3 meters, as opposed to 2.5 meters, which was a drawing that was incorrectly drawn, and this has been amended. In addition, there is an existing fence, a 2-meter fence facing this property, and given that this building, the proposed building is similar to a 3-meter high household extension, the increase is basically a 1-meter increase on the permitted 2-meter boundary fence. On this basis, it considered that there will be no impact to this property in terms of loss of light or overbearing. And to conclude, the proposed development is considered to provide an appropriate land use in terms of providing new residential development to consider the bulk scale and mass and respect the character appearance of the site and preserve the character and appearance of North Ward and occasional conservation area. And there will be no unacceptable or detrimental impact to the means of adjoining occupants, and therefore, on balance, the proposal is acceptable on other material considerations.
Great, thank you very much, Michael. And my apologies, I should have officially said to Gareth that Councillor Potter gave her apologies for lateness. I did tell him before, but Councillor Potter, you obviously won't be able to participate in this agenda item. That's great. Thank you. Thank you again, Michael. We move on to objectors. In that case, we have Sam Bodner and Sasha Ward. Can I just, yep, great. And you've got 5 minutes between the two of you. Have you decided who's going first?
I'll go first, Sasha Ward.
Great, fantastic. Whenever you're ready, we'll have the lights on and we'll give it time. Go, great.
Well, hello, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sasha Ward, like I said. I'm the owner of the ground floor flat, 5 Firefighter Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my wife, Ingy Ward, and our neighbour, Cormac Kerrin, who owns the top floor of 5A Firefighter Avenue. We objected to this planning application back in December 2020, and our stance remains the same for the following reasons that I'd like to summarise for you now. Firstly, the completely overbearing and overwhelming nature of this property, the proposed development in terms of height, scale, and increased sense of enclosure that it will bring upon our home and living space. With the height of the proposed development being 3 meters and its close proximity to our exterior wall that you saw at the back in the image there of 2.5 meters, we believe this will negatively impact our access to daylight and sunlight. And furthermore, this being my primary place of work as a remote worker, I feel this will impact my quality of life in my primary place of work. No assessment has been made of the impact on the proposed development on the daylight sunlight conditions to our living space and outdoor space. Therefore, we object to this application on these grounds. Secondly, no technical assessment has been undertaken of whether a satisfactory standard of living space would be created internally of the proposed dwelling in terms of daylight sunlight penetration. The officer report assessment simply confirmed to an examination of space standard compliance only, and so the requirements of planning policy in this respect have not been fully engaged. Lastly, the absence of any technical assessment on the impact of the proposed development on the Northwold and Cazenove conservation area. In our view, there is significant harm, which is unable to be outweighed by any demonstrable public benefit according to the standard planning policy test. We're also extremely disappointed at the lack of communication that we've had from the council. Since submitting our objection back in December 2020, we've had no responses to any emails or formal communications until this past week. We heard about this meeting by chance from our neighbour, and altogether just adds up to our sense of frustration. In our view, the proposed development is deficient in many ways, many respects, and planning permission ought to be refused. We're also aware that the 3 local ward councillors have registered speaking objection to this application, which we feel underlines the validity of our concerns. Thank you for listening, and we hope you consider our objections as part of your decision making on this application. And I'll hand you over to my neighbour, Sam.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to put it out in three things. Number one is the proposed development. I think it's very misleading, meaning our living room was marked as a shed. The side windows where they say we won't lose daylight sunlight has got a very tall fence on the side from our neighbor number one. To the rear of our property, of the garden space we have, there's a number one Oldell Street, which is a very tall 2.5-story house. So it's ultimately putting us in a corner. Feels a bit like a claustrophobic. I don't even have the correct word for it. Daylight, sunlight, privacy. It's disturbing and breaching all of these. All of these. Having gone through planning policy, bedroom with a sunlight is not acceptable. You need to have natural daylight. A 5 square meter for a bicycle and a bin, not acceptable. With no disrespect on the officer's report, it says it's not part of the garden. It's like it's not a separate place. It should be just like the garden of number 7, number 9, number 11, number 3, number 1, and so on. That's the point of a conservation area, to keep the appearance the same. The tree is standing there for 25 years. I mean, as far as I remember myself, with leaves healthy. I'm not a tree expert, but it's there every day, beautiful. It could stand another 25 years. If you take that away, that's the only tree left. Years ago, because it was disturbing the neighbor, there was another cherry tree, which we had to remove because it was disturbing the neighbor's property. We don't want to be put into a triangle corner without any space. The way the council handled this, with no disrespect to anyone, 1.5 years later, next week there's a subcommittee. When we spoke to the neighbors, we didn't see it, nothing on the street posts. In addition to this all, I've got a little sister, my younger sister, Sarah, which is disabled in a wheelchair. Her only private space in her life where she's got to go out is on that little piece of grass where, with no disrespect, they're now trying to erect a 1-bedroom house, which is not acceptable. So to summarize, I think it objects conservation area, negative impact on the neighbors, and not being handled the way it should be by the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. We have also 3 councillors speaking in objection. Councillor Louisa Goldberg, Councillor Sampas, Councillor Caroline Woodley. You've been allocated 5 minutes each. Is that your understanding currently?
We will mostly do a bit less than that, because I understand that people want to get home tonight. But yes, each one of us wants to speak.
Okay. Up to 5 minutes for each of you. Can I just check who's going in what order? Sam, Louisa, Caroline. Great.
Good to go? Okay, fantastic. Okay, thank you, Chair. I just want to firstly stress that out of the 19 residents who were consulted on this, 14 out of the 19 replied with objections. And we were approached by Mr. Bonders as he was very concerned about the development and the impact it would have upon his family, particularly his disabled sister. Number 3 Firefighter Avenue, which we went to visit, has a very small garden, which is an absolute lifeline for his sister. As the case of councillors, we've got numerous material concerns relating to this development, which seems completely inappropriate for a very small green space. We will speak on different aspects of the application and why we don't believe this development should go ahead. I just wanted to firstly talk about our local plan and the pioneering commitment to biodiversity in the plan. In our local plan, policy LP 47 on page 157, it states, point A, all developments should protect and where possible enhance biodiversity leading to a net gain. Point B, all development should maximise opportunities to create new or make improvements to existing natural environments, nature conservation areas, etc., etc. We believe that this development would undermine this policy in our local plan by taking a small green space and would not result in a net gain of biodiversity. LP 47 and commitments to a net gain of biodiversity in all developments was an innovation, I believe, from our previous local plans based upon the GLA urban greening factor. In your pack for this meeting, you will see that officers have cited precedents for this proposed development at the rear of 5 Filey Avenue, items 6.13 and 6.14 in your pack. The application cited in 6.13, number 34 Filey Avenue, reference 2019-1396, had a decision to grant for permission on the 2nd of August 2019. I've tried to clarify with officers about the other application in your pack, item 6.14, as to when a decision was granted for the rear of 81 Osbodeston Road. I believe from looking at the planning portal, it was 2011, but it would be very helpful for officers just to clarify when a decision was made. The reason why I cite these two applications is that Hackney's local plan, LPP 33, was adopted at full council on the 22nd of July 2020. Thus, I question if the two applications that are mentioned in your pack can be seen as a precedent for the rear of 5 Filey Avenue, because they were granted a decision before 2020 and the implementation of our local plan. LP 47, the policy that all developments were, where possible, should have a net gain of biodiversity applied, as I understand, was not previous council policy, though it would be good for officers to clarify if I'm not correct in this matter. As a council, to conclude, I think we should be doing everything we can to champion biodiversity and produce a net gain from all developments. Unfortunately, I don't believe that this development enhances our policy, and I'm concerned about the precedent it will set going forward on green spaces across the borough. This is an extremely small, green space. We're not talking about a very large development. We're not talking about a very kind of large addition in terms of housing need. So I think in this instance that this development should be turned down, and I'll pass over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Chair. I'm generally in favour of new development as long as it's spacious, fits within local policy, and the standards are right. However, this particular application, I'd like to object. And I refer to the Hackney Local Plan Policy LP2 and the London Plan Policy D3, where it states that all new development should be designed in a way so any new occupier should not have a diverse impact of amenity space. The current amenity space is around 5.7 square meters, the courtyard, and it's to be used as a cycle parking and a refuse as well, which is inadequate and it won't comply with these two policies. I would also like to point out is that all local authorities within Greater London and some outside of London now require a basement impact assessment to support any planning application, which includes any form of subterranean development, which has to demonstrate that it doesn't increase potential to groundwater flooding. In this case, no basement impact assessment was undertaken for this particular application. And lastly, the concern of a loss of light to the garden. The neighbour at number 3 looks after his full-time carer for his sister who lives with him. She needs 24/7 care. She spends a lot of time, a lot of time in her garden. That will affect her tremendously. And that's it from me. That's what I'm objecting today.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also going to pick up on that point of what it means for a resident to be boxed in the way that the the objector here has described would be the case, particularly for his sister, who takes great value out of that outdoor space. And I want to pick up also on the, I guess, the garden grabbing kind of tone of this application. As the report sets out, we are looking at a parcel of land which has been annexed. It's an L-shaped garden, less than half the size of the original garden. It's bounded by rear gardens, predominantly residential uses. We're looking at substantial loss of over 50% of that garden space. We're looking at concern around conditions around sustainable drainage systems and flood resilience. I mean, myself and my colleagues were standing knee deep in water only a few weeks ago in our ward, although we are surrounded by fantastic green space across the boundaries. When we're looking at Stoke Newington Common, Clapton Common, Abney Park, the ward itself is very densely built. The breathing heart of the ward is where we have retained some garden space. There is already great concern that is outside of the gift, I think, of planning and officers often to intervene where we see some of those gardens covered with hard paving or hard standing. We see extensions built, and there is constant kind of call for mitigation. What we don't want to see is a building permitted to be replacing some green space where it still remains. I recognise that there is a proposal here for a green roof. I'm a big fan of green roofs. I certainly would like to bring them in wherever we can, but they are no compensation for open land. They simply are not. So to box in an area, I mean, until you actually go and visit that property, I think it's really hard to understand what impact that will have. I recognise that the building is not particularly high. I understand the applicant's desire to make good use of that space, but it will box in that young woman and their family in a way that is just really oppressive, and I just do not think we should really support at all. We will lose green space, we will lose an opportunity for kind of drainage, and I think we have had a real reminder this summer of the severe implications of that if we let that go too far. So if there is any opportunity to stop it and to mitigate, then I really think we should. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Woodley. We now have supporters Isil Ramadan and Levant Osman. I believe that Isil is joining remotely. Yeah. Who is planning to speak first?
I'd like to speak first, if that's
okay. Right, you've got as the councillors have had 5 minutes each, you both have up to 20 minutes to discuss, to present, but that's up to 20 minutes, of course. So I don't feel the need to go all the way.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So my name is Ishil Joker. I'm the principal designer of this project. So thank you for your time today and for the comments raised. Just a few things that I wanted to start off with at the beginning. We keep referring to the site as a garden of Firefighter Avenue. Unfortunately, we cannot agree with this due to the site being obtained via auction from my client's late father in the 80s. The land was actually in 3 parcels. During the process of this planning application, my client undertook solicitors and surveyors to establish the boundaries of the site. During the process of this, I won't go into too much detail, but some of the neighbours, previous owners of Firefighter Avenue, tried to take part of the land when finding out that this was the case. So my client has been back and forth through a hard time trying to establish this land, and that this land is actually a parcel of land separate to Firefighter Avenue. So I just wanted to clear that one up. While I respect this is a very constrained site. It's very small. However, my client, has something inherited from his father and would like to develop it. He has the opportunity to, and therefore we have tried several approaches. We have had pre-acts with the councils where we started off with a 3-storey to a 2-storey, and obviously now down to a 1.5 stories. We feel that what we're proposing is not actually overbearing. The height is only at 3 meters. The fence opposite Firefighter is at 2.5 meters high, which is already tall and overbearing. For Firefighter Avenue, while I sympathise with the owners sister and their disability. That currently has a small wall, which means that they can pass over into Firefighter Avenue. While I understand the outlook would be great, and I, sympathise and respect that, my client also has is allowed to put a 2-metre fence between the boundary, which would change the outlook anyway. Their development is only 3 metres high, therefore we don't feel that it would be a substantial impact. Looking at biodiverse features, we are going to implement a green roof. Obviously, in our drawings, we mentioned the sedum roof. That's not the case. It would be looking to do a proper green roof, which would encourage biodiversity. It would tackle some of the water service runoffs. We are trying to be carbon-free and very eco-friendly. That's a major topic for everybody at the moment. As well as that, we've proposed solar panels, which we feel help contribute to that. I understand another big issue raised is the space of the courtyard. Now, we do have the courtyard, which is 5.7 square meters. Yes, it's not ideal, but it is what we have to work with. We've provided size standards for the living area, which are greater than usual. And we feel that that takes that into account also. But what has also not been mentioned is that we have provided a 3.2 square meter courtyard at basement level as well, which is part of the light well. So it's not only a 5.7 square meter courtyard that we are providing to our clients. There is more than that, which we feel is more than sufficient. We have had daylighting assessments made, which show that we exceed the levels, especially in the living area. Yes, I know in the bedroom we're at 0.8. However, we do have a solution for that also. We were discussing the proposal of adding a roof, kind of a floor skylight well, possibly disguised as a coffee table to bring natural light from the ground floor into the basement level to meet those 1% that we feel we can meet. Overall, we feel that we've provided, although the roof plan is not in the presentation, it shows that there's lots of skylights, so the building would be light, bright, and provide really good quality of accommodation for the person occupying. This property is built for 1 or 2 people to occupy. It is not going to be busy or disturb anyone. At this present time, that site is subject to fly tipping, antisocial activity. A variety of things have happened at that site over the years that my client has had to deal with. And we feel proposing housing here, which would also benefit to the housing crisis, would provide someone a good home and would eliminate all of the factors related to fly tipping, antisocial activity, and actually be better all round. In terms of the conservation area, we feel that we have met that through using local materials. So we're using London stock brick, we've used Flemish bonds, we've used perforated bricks and embossed bricks to bring something attractive to the site. And what we haven't tried to do is we haven't tried to mimic what is there. We have tried to be contemporary and present, as well as meeting sustainability measures, house sizing standards. And I think that's all from me from the moment, really. I think I like to think I've tried to cover all elements. So that's all from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Levent?
Hi there, Levent Mustafa here. Okay, basically, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me here. Basically, I've come here today just to clear things up. All the technical side, as far as the design and structure, is been handled by the councillor, Marcus Garvey, and the architect. I'm here to basically give a brief history and things that nobody can really talk about and answer other than myself about the land and the situation and the long history of it up until today, since the 80s, when my dad purchased it from the auction. Now I'm going to give a brief history on the land and what we've had to put up with, and the difficulties and the stress that we've had. And I'm going to keep it short and simple, and I'm not going to get too technical. However, if there's anybody or if there's any questions they would like to know more depth or more detail, They can feel free to ask, and we can discuss, and I can answer and clear up anything that anyone wants to know. So I'll start basically from the very beginning, and like I said, I'll keep it short and brief. My dad purchased the land in the 80s, right, from an auction, the late 80s. The land originally was 2 sections, right? There was an East Coast and a West Coast, right, with 2 title numbers, separate title numbers, right? The left side was owned by a gentleman called Mr. Ronald Stone. The west side was owned by my father, Mr. Osman Mustafa, right? Now, my father's been on that land and he's been using it for building activities, material storage, and workshop activities all the way throughout the 90s since I was a young boy, and I used to go there frequently with him. And he's been on that land for as far as we can remember. Unfortunately, after he passed away in 2007, many years after, through probate, the land was then, of course, passed down to me. I was very young at that time. I was barely 20 years old, and I was trying to get my career going. So I was not fit and experienced enough to handle that. So what I done was I gave it to my uncle, Mr. Spiros Dimitrios, whose actual name is on the titles as it currently stands. Now, we've had a lot of stress and a lot of fines from the council, where they've fined us because people have dumped rubbish and garbage due to a proper barrier not being erected. Now, in the 90s and after the millennium, there was never really a proper fence or a barrier from Old Hill Street to basically protect the land. So every couple of months, every 6 months, you get the, if you don't mind me saying so, you'll get all the local junkies and lowlives throwing over their rubbish and whatever else it is they can put in plastic bags and throw over. And every so often you'll get a heap of rubbish. It will look like a dump site, like a wasteland. And so every 6 months or so, we would get some kind of, or a family member would get some kind of fine. We'd have to go, spend a lot of money, clear it up. That went on and on and on for a very long time. Eventually, moving onwards, we've been going through every angle. There was charges on the land which my father owed to government and things which we had to all pay and clear up through solicitors. I've spent lots of money and I've gone through a lot of headache going back and forth to try and clear up the land legally and to make it somewhat respectable, to get ready to do something with it, right? So the last hurdle was, if I'm not mistaken, 2015, 2016, there was Firefighter Avenue. There was a family called the Gilkses. Now, I said to myself, I wasn't going to name any names, but it has to be done. I'm not being disrespectful to nobody, but the gentleman, Sasha Ward, who currently occupies Firefighter Avenue ground floor, he's got nothing to do with this. The people before that, we approached them and we tried to be friendly and we tried to say, look, this is our land. Let's be civilized about it. We're trying to do something. We regard all the neighbors. This is what we're trying to do. They went silent for a few months. Afterwards, we found they tried to claim adverse possession, which didn't go too well. We've been occupying that land since the 80s. We don't have any problems or any disputes with Sasha Ward or Firefighter Avenue, the people who live there right now. So I just want to make that clear. Eventually, we tracked down the gentleman that owned the other half of Firefighter Avenue, Mr. Ronald Stone. We bought his bit off him and we unified the land. We got reports, surveys, measurements, everything you could think of and more. And then the architect, she done a pre-planning application and she amended it over and over and over and done everything she could to please the council. In other words, she done every alteration to the plans she could. In other words, to get the planning, to just get something so we can simply sell it off and get rid of it. There has been also, still till today, rubbish and debris and rubble that has been dumped on that land, and it's still there. And now what's happened is it's become even more chaotic because weeds have grown up now. So you have the rubble that's come up about 4 or 5 meters high, and the weeds that have grown up on the land. It looks like a mess. So nothing's really been done about that. And the last headache we've been through is another fine, go back 5, 6 months ago, because the weeds are high and it's becoming a danger, of course, to number 3 Firefighter Avenue. So as far as I'm concerned, all the technical aspects of the building and the planning, they've been covered, and we've done everything to satisfy the council, as my architect has done. I'm really here to clear up any historical things and facts that may come up that anybody might wish to say or ask, so we can set it straight once and for all. We simply wish to get some planning and sell it on and move on, preferably to somebody local of the community area. So we feel we've done everything to satisfy the council, and we've actually lost a great deal of money and time, and we've incurred a lot of stress because of this land. We have lives to live. We cannot go to Stamford Hill every week or every month to check up on it. We've had from barriers being put to adverse possession, to cars being put in there, to locks being put, to it being divided and carved up, to everything basically against us, in the opposite of our favor, so that somebody hoping we don't proceed, and then time goes, and then somebody else probably hoping and wishing that they could claim adverse possession and just take it and do whatever they want with it. But we've got true reports, we've got daylight reports, we've got measurements, we've got everything that's been asked and more. And that's pretty much the situation on the land and the history of it. As I said, anything technical as far as the planning is concerned, the building itself, the lights, the windows, my architect, she can discuss that and put that straight. But as far as the history of it, the facts, and any kind of evidence anyone might ever need, we can provide that, and I can answer any question and clear up any confusion that there is to do with 1A Old Hill Street plot, Stamford Hill. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
Cheers. Sorry?
Could you just turn your microphone off?
Sure, cheers, sorry.
Thanks very much. Members, questions? Who's going to kick us off? Councillor Webb? And if we could keep it to material planning considerations, that would be ideal as ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in the condition of the site at the moment, and going from the photos that we have, it looks like it's fenced off already, and the fencing, it looks as if that there's fencing that does mimic the height of the proposal. I just wondered if, it looks like some very tall fencing around that's similar to the site. It looks like there's, well, it's from above you wouldn't see the height of the fence. It's just that it's almost looks like it's been fenced into what the walls would be. Is that, what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, there is a fence. The quality of these on the screen is not very clear, but there is a fence in the middle, and then there's a taller fence at the back, which is probably higher than 2.5 meters. But that's the thing with the screen, it's not very clear.
I suppose also it's probably, I'm not sure whether it is a material planning condition, whether there's a fence there or not, is whether the development is accessible within the planning policy. John's come back on.
Yes, please, Chair. It's just in the impact, and that's what we're considering, because if it's been fenced to the height of what the building will be, then the impact would just be a building within that. We'll see what I'm saying, the height of the fence and the impact is already there.
Can I just bring in Adele, because I know she's got her hand up. Hi, Adele.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just offer some comments on the kind of plot orientation and outlook, that would be great. Thank you. So yes, it is a key factor in kind of coming to a decision on the recommendation for this application, that there is relatively high boundary treatment surrounding the site. I couldn't say personally how long that has been there, but it does look like it's been there for some time. And because of this, you already have quite a high enclosure to the properties that surround the site. And obviously of most concern are numbers 3 and number 5 Filey Avenue. In respect of number 3, initially the development would almost align with the rear of their extension. They do have quite a large extension at number 3, and you have the 2 windows that face onto the garden, and it's these windows that we were considering the main windows to look at for reasons of enclosure and light. In terms of enclosure, as I said, the fences are already quite high, and the building would fit quite well within the site. At 3 meters tall and set to the rear of the site, we consider that the outlook is not going to be significantly affected. We also took into consideration the orientation of the site, and so the new building will sit directly north of the rear terrace, which means that when the sun rises in the morning, it rises in the east. It will then travel round the side of the gardens to the front of the terrace, whereby in the greater part of the day to the south, the main buildings of that terrace would already block the light to the rear gardens there. So there cannot be any significant impact on the adjoining properties in terms of light, because of the fact that it's situated due north of those properties. I do sympathise with the residents that have spoken today about the sense of enclosure. It is quite close to their properties, but the consideration we had was that there is a distance. We looked at the windows, and the building will roughly sit within the existing heights. Where there is a gap from a distance between, say, 2.5 meters, an additional half a meter, we came to the conclusion that that would not be so significant that it would be that it would result in an unacceptable sense of enclosure. So we felt that all these factors led to a positive recommendation on those grounds in terms of amenity. I wonder if I could just pick up on a couple of things that was mentioned before. Just one of them being the conditions, the drainage. We wouldn't necessarily require a drainage report at this stage. We did consult our floods and suds team, and they were happy with the recommendations, subject to mitigation measures for sustainable drainage and any flood resilient measures. We've got 2 conditions, one at 8.1.3, and 8.1.7, which cover these. So I believe that we have covered adequately surface water drainage and additional flooding. And also there was an issue about biodiversity. Yes, so obviously you are losing a semi-green space. The land has been used for other activities for quite some time. It's not currently appearing as a kind of an open garden space as such, but also the proposal does involve a green roof, and as part of that would address, as officers feel, it would address the requirement for an improvement to biodiversity through LP 47. That's all from me for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Adele. Councillor Webb, sounds actually great. Thank you. I've got Councillor Young.
Hey, I have huge sympathy with the residents. I also do have quite a lot of sympathy with the owner of the land. Firstly, on drainage, I accept that there are floods and suds conditions put in here. I just am really concerned about this, this basement area in this very enclosed space. How do we know that drainage won't be a problem here?
Who's the best person to pick that up? Drainage, is that Adele again, or urban design?
I can come back to you on that in that the development won't be able to go ahead until we have received satisfactory details of a number of mitigation measures for sustainable drainage and any flood resilience measures as well. And these will be then, those details will then be viewed by our expert team. So I think we're pretty confident as officers that whatever comes in will be rigorously examined, and it won't be approved unless it's fit for purpose. So I hope that does respond to those queries. Thank you.
I mean, assuming that assuming it can be mitigated, I guess. Back at the beginning of the presentation, there was something about similar buildings in that row. I can't quite, and I've looked on Google Maps, and Councillor Sadek has Google Maps up in front of us. I wonder if you could show us an aerial shot so we can see the back gardens in the row. I wanted to get a sense of these other buildings where something not dissimilar had been built and how they were similar or different to this.
Thank you. Who's going to pick that one up? Michael? Or... Okay.
It would be great to see within that the garden at number 3, the extension at 3 Filey Avenue as well, to get a sense of how close those are and the relationship between them.
Yeah, so there's the issue of the extension, and then there's 2 planning sort of applications that have been granted already on them.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add a comment whilst Michael was looking?
Not yet, no.
Sorry, Chair, can I add a comment whilst Michael's searching for the photographs? So Michael's going to bring up examples of similar developments. Can I just add that infill developments such as this is commonly submitted and supported by the Planning Service Leader Policy LP12, meeting housing needs and locations for new homes. Appreciates these windfall sites, especially in an area like Hackney where sites are quite hard to come by. So they provide a windfall housing delivery, which has been identified previously and in the local plan itself.
So in general, policy supports infill and self-build, and then specifically in this area, the question is around the precedent, really, isn't it? Are you ready to answer the question?
Yes, sorry,
can you see the screen okay, or do you need the lights dropping? You okay?
Okay, an example at apologies to have my microphone on. This is an example at number 81C Filey Avenue, a similar sort of infill development, and if I could just scroll it round, that has a similar relationship to, just see if I can make that slightly wider, has a similar relationship with properties at either side and to gardens at the rear. So hopefully that could shed some light. Thank you.
And I wonder if I could ask the neighbour, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your full name.
Sorry, can you speak up? Sorry.
I wonder if I could ask the neighbour, is it Sam as well? So we can't actually see where your property goes out to compared to where this one goes out to. Can you describe a bit more about how it appears to you?
They're terribly misleading the council, because if you make a 360 swing of this photo, you'll see the other, where you just were on Filey Avenue, you will see the other side, the full garden. Please rotate all the way, that's it. across the road. That's it. That's the way it should be. You see, a normal garden.
Yeah.
Now, that house that they just showed as an example is set back. It's not like for like, and the house in Osbaldeston still has a large garden. Two wrongs don't make one right. Wrong. Now, in regards to Oldham Street, our site that we're speaking about, look at number 7. No disrespect, they're saying it's a parcel of land, 1A Oldham. It's a technique to mislead the council. Look at number 3, look at number 7, look at all the other gardens. It should be the same. That's it. So if you swing around the camera, the other side of the road, which you've shown everything nice besides what you're supposed to, show the garden of number 7. That's the way it should be. In regards to the windows in our living room, there are 2 little frosted windows for air ventilation because of the proximity to the other house. We have the number 1 Oldham Street, the tall house on one side. You're proposing a box on the other side. You're saying there's an existing fence. There's existing fence on the road, 1.8 meters, regular garden fence. They're proposing 3 meters, almost double. It's the proximity to my deck chair is like this table to where I am. It's totally misleading. With the angle, you have a lovely photographer, but they're tricking you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more.
Just officers, I suppose, just in response to that, my question to officers would be probably urban design, maybe, around, I suppose, the point around that's how gardens should be is not supported in policy, potentially. I mean, can someone sort of answer that? Who's going to pick that one up?
Hi, Chair.
Hi.
Well, in terms of design and conservation, as mentioned, we do support these infill development as long as they're subservient to the neighboring dwellings and in the right design and character, which we feel this proposal has sufficiently done. So it's not dissimilar to any other single-story outbuildings that you might find in rear gardens, and we support activating the frontage along the street.
Thank you.
But one more,
Yeah,
just on, just so that I understand how we consider the green space. If there is a space which potentially could be green space but is currently filled with rubbish, do we still see it as green space?
Well, as my manager stated previously, it's and the owner, it's actually a fly tipping space at the moment, and it's a bit of an eyesore. It doesn't really preserve the character appearance of the conservation area, and you know, our enforcement team could serve a notice on it, but it could be argued still it is sort of a green space, but it's like I say, it's just a backline site which is used for tipping, fly tipping. So it doesn't really enhance the conservation area.
And I suppose if someone wants to bring an application to make it into a park, then they can, but they haven't. The application is for a dwelling house.
I suppose in terms of Councillor Woodley's point about flooding risk and so on, it's still soil space rather than paved space. Yeah. So we still see it. That might not call that green space, but it's space which is drainage rather than space which is solid. Is that right? I don't know the answer to this. I'm checking with you. Councillor Woodley made the point about there is a real concern around London and other cities about paving over space which is currently soil or grass, and therefore water drains into it. It doesn't drain into areas where we, pave our front gardens.
Well, that's why they have to provide a drainage report and flood report, and obviously they're providing a green roof to help with urban drainage. So these mitigation measures would help to reduce any flood risk or other mitigations. So obviously it's been conditioned. So
thanks very much. Other questions? Councillor Levy, Councillor Sadek, Councillor Desmond, then Councillor Narcos.
Thank you, Chair. it's not a given that the LPA consistently supports basement excavations. And I'm most concerned that there's very little mention or no mention at all been made of the likely impact of a basement excavation very close to neighbouring properties, number 3, 5, and Filey and 1 Old Hill, in terms of potential subsidence, movement, subsequent cracking of walls, etc., of those properties. I say that with unfortunately a great deal of experience, because if I can illustrate a little bit further, just to highlight this concern, 2 doors away from where I live, the council, for very sound reasons, refused an application for a basement excavation. I thought very sound reasons. However, the householder decided to take this bill to the planning inspectorate, and surprisingly, he was successful, and the excavation of the basement was built out. My immediate neighbour has had cracking, movement, so have I. I'm seeing walls, cracks appearing walls. Security grills and bars don't align any longer. So there's a serious impact. And here we've got such a confined space. I'm very fearful of the consequences of a basement excavation here. And it troubles me very, very much. Secondly, I just want to touch upon 6.4.1. Sorry, apologies. 6.2.1, which is LP1 of the Hackney Local Plan. It said all new development must be of the highest architectural and urban design quality. Innovative contemporary design will be supported where it respects and complements historic character. I'm just finding that difficult to square with the Clapton Conservation Area Advisory Committee's concerns raised at 4.6.1. This crude application lacks any refined or detailed design thought. There is substantial loss of over 50% of the garden amenity of 5 Filey Avenue, and there's limited amenity space for the new dwelling. I'm quite sure how you actually square this circle.
My understanding is that I think the design has been developed since that submission. Can the design team... Adele, sorry. Sorry, Adele, do you want to come in that one? You're on mute, I think, Adele, or we can't hear you anyway.
Apologies. I did actually raise my hand just to the previous question, the matters about the subsidence, but I would say that just in terms of the design, since the comments were received, that we have had a series of amendments. So our design officers have been working with the case officer to make changes and make improvements. They were initially not happy with the original proposal, but they are satisfied now. I think in terms of historic character, I will leave that up to my design colleague to respond to. But it is obviously a very low level development that has minimal impact on the street scene, because of what you can see as well from neighbouring streets. Obviously, we're in a conservation area and the entire site is relevant, and there are quite a lot of instances where we do allow kind of infills in conservation areas and outside conservation areas. On that respect, I probably will leave it up to design to elaborate. I wonder if I could just come back on the basement excavation, just for the point of the concerns about subsidence. It's not something that we would consider as part of the planning application, but the development will be subject to a building control application, and those matters will be covered by the building control legislation and that subsequent application. So I feel that the matters relating to the subsidence are not those that we could really consider at the current time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dale. Councillor Levy, does that answer your questions?
Sorry, it does answer it, but I'm not necessarily satisfied with the answer.
Right. Okay.
Can I, sorry, Chair, just to interject there. Can I just emphasise and effectively repeat what Adele has just said on the issue of structural stability? It isn't relevant to planning, so it can't factor into your decision?
Councillor Sadek.
Thanks, Chair. I just had a couple of quick questions. One is on the potential impact of the development in terms of light coming in particular to number 3 next door. We've heard about the size of the fences currently. I just wondered, I'm looking at an aerial view on Google Maps and it looks like there are quite a lot of trees in the space. I don't know how long ago this image was taken, but what's the current impact of trees within the development site on light coming in? And how much do they add to the impact of the fence that's currently there?
Right, there was only one tree, a sycamore tree, which is on the adjoining boundary facing the site. And as stated in the report, that tree is decaying. And so if the development goes ahead and is constructed, then that tree would probably die anyway. And it's possibly in the wrong location. I think there were no other trees that were really assessed, but my colleague Leif Mortensen could expand on that. Can you expand on that?
It was commented earlier today that the tree looks healthy, and yes, it will be looking healthy because of the decay is what's called Heartwood Decay. Heartwood Decay do not influence on the water uptake in the tree, so the tree will look perfectly healthy, and at some point it will fall over because of the decay in the base will become to such an extent the tree will fall over, but it will fall over looking good. That's why it has to be removed, or that's why I want to protect it.
Okay, thanks. I was just my thinking there was that the trees in combination with the fences could present quite an obstacle to light coming into that space presently anyway, but that clears that up, so thank you. The second question was just about the roof plan, and we've heard about the green roof. I might be the only one in the room who doesn't quite understand this plan, but I'm just wondering what the sort of, are these windows the green boxes on the roof? And if so, taking into account the solar panels and the windows, how much space on that roof will actually be left for greening?
Well, there is solar panels. The square boxes are solar panels, and so can't seem to show the roof plan, but it's definitely there. Can you?
It's not on.
It is.
Councillor, the architect has raised her hand to speak, and she may be able to expand on the specific dimensions resulting in the development.
It's weird. I don't know where it's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry, the architect then in that case. Do you want to answer this first?
Sorry, yes. There is a combination of skylights and solar panels on there. More than 50% of the roof is actually allocated to green space. The solar panels would be laid on top of that and not taking away. But I can give you some dimensions of the skylights if that helps understand it, or I don't know if I can send over a roof plan just so it's a little bit clearer, so it can be seen visually. It would help clarify that up a little bit more. But there is more than 50% space allocated to green space.
Sadek, do you want to answer your question?
Yeah, that's useful. I wonder if you can say how much space that would be in terms of measurements, the greater than 50% of the roof, just roughly.
Would you like that in square meters or kind of dimensions?
That would, or both, okay. Whatever you're able to.
I can actually get you that.
Just tell us. We don't need to see any drawings or anything.
Yeah, that's fine. I can just get you roughly. Sorry, so I've got to give you accurate information. So you're looking at, I'm so sorry, just square meterage wise, roughly. You're looking at about 25 square meters, 25 square meters of green space roughly.
Okay, Thank you.
25 square meters, okay. Sorry, and we only take contributions when there's a direct question being addressed, okay. Councillor Desmond.
On 6.3.3, it looks at the light. Certainly in the past, we've also looked at the diagonal light as well as the vertical light. Is the main reason we've looked at the VSC, the vertical sky component, because this is low rise? Perhaps you could explain that. The other thing is, I am concerned about overdevelopment, even though we support infill sites. Is there no other way within the limits of this very small site that the building could be slightly further away from existing properties, or is it having to be here because of the nature of the land available?
Yes, the site is constrained, so it'd be difficult to set it back any further and reduce the quality of the accommodation. In terms of the BSC, there is, although there is no BRE report, we've considered it and it does meet the VSC. It should meet the VSC and then no skyline. What we would normally do is take the center of the window and do a 25-degree, anything obstructing a window, we do a 25-degree. And I think it might just pass that. Yeah, I think it passed that. So this is why we thought it was acceptable in terms of no skyline.
Was that everything, Councillor Desmond? Yeah, great, thank you. Councillor Narcos.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Sedek's question about the green roof. So the overall space of green roof is 25 square meters, and the development is 66 square meters. Picking up on the point that Councillor Palace raised as well in terms of the loss of green space and LP 47, are we happy that 25 square meters of green roof is better for biodiversity than the 66 square meters of essentially grassland as it is at the moment?
Yes, we are happy because it'd be probably be no different to a house extension where we would require maybe a green roof or a water butt. You know, this obviously they want to build a structure, and obviously you're going to lose that green space. So to mitigate that, obviously you're going to have to provide some biodiversity. Although it is constrained site, that is acceptable. Plus other measures will be introduced in terms of sustainability. So yes, we think it's acceptable.
Okay, I just had a couple of other questions. One is about the sort of light within the property itself. So I think sort of, as has been mentioned, about the kind of design quality. Obviously, the entire basement floor of the property has no windows. It has access to light through skylights. Are we happy that there'll be sufficient light in essentially what is half of the property is windowless?
Yeah, yes, we are. And as addressed by the agent there, there are things that they're going to increase the light. They did the report, but unfortunately it wasn't available. Normally on the average daylight pattern, 4-bedroom window requires 1%, but it only meets 0.8%. So although it's a shortfall of 0.2%, we're happy with that. And like the agent said, they will take light from the ground floor, possibly, and create more light into the bedroom. So
Okay,
yes,
that's not currently in the plan though, is that right?
No, no. It's not that detailed. It'd probably be more detailed if there's a building control plan, but no, planning plans are very limited. Okay. Other than the section through, there's not a lot that can be shown in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
But even without the internal sort of skylight on the ground floor, you're content that the light within the building is acceptable?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. And especially the ground floor, because there are two double aspect windows, and then you've got roof light windows. You've got a light well, so light will just flood into the whole development. Yeah, we think it's acceptable, yeah.
Other questions? Is everyone content? Does anyone have anything else? Councillor Young? Yeah.
I've got two more. One's back to the roof garden. So I'm looking at the picture of the roof garden or the roof, and on the I'm sorry that we can't get it up on there because it's just much clearer when you see it from above. There isn't a big section of roof which would be roof garden. It's sort of roof garden in between all the other things on the roof. Yeah, so there's a big section which is window. There are two big sections which are solar panels, I guess. Three other smaller sections which are window, and then in between those we'd be sort of fitting.
Could you explain
greenery.
what a green roof is? Because it's not a garden.
Okay,
So,
but I mean,
people don't go up onto it.
I mean,
can you explain what it is, please?
Yeah, a green roof is basically a roof which is it helps with biodiversity and for wildlife and urban drainage, and it also provides heat for the building. And this be on top of the roof. So obviously it's very limited for the amount of space because of the shape of the building. And then it's going to be incorporated skylights. So yeah, it is quite limited, but it's something that we require on these type of developments, especially where you have a flat roof as opposed to a pitched roof where it's more difficult. So yeah, it will help with drainage and biodiversity, wildlife.
Yeah, Michael, my understanding of green roof and the ones I've seen in other sorts of places around Hackney is it's got a level of substrate, right? So it's got a level, it's got wilds of growth on it, and then the solar panels sort of sit on top of it. So it's not necessarily a sort of solar panel sort of flat to the ground necessarily, that doesn't allow sort of growth underneath it. It sits on top of like a stand, is my understanding, but I don't know whether that's the case here. And I might add bring in Isil Ramadan then in that case, who might be able to answer this specifically here.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
oh, sorry, Isa, go on.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that yes, the green roof is, as you say, it will tackle surface water drainage, as well as the solar panels won't be sitting flush, like you said, they'll be sitting at an angle depending on the assessment at the time. Just wanted to add a small note. The site is actually around 45 square meters, as it currently is the existing, and the green roof area is around 25 square meters that we're proposing. I know you said 66, but that's over the course of the 2 floors and not the flat site. So we are trying to, make it as green as possible where we physically can, because the site is so, it's got constraints.
Okay, thank you.
One more totally separate issue. So there's been a lot of talk about whether this land is part of, in effect, part of the back garden of another property, whether it's owned by someone else or not. Would it make any difference in planning terms if it was part of the back garden of another property?
Yes, it would, because if we found evidence that the site did not belong to the owner, then we would have to probably withdraw the application.
It's a separate point that I'm making, which is, would it make any difference to whether, it's not about who owns it, it's does it make any difference to whether it's a good or a bad idea to build this building on this bit of land, whether it's already a part of someone else's back garden or whether it's separated off?
Hi, Councillor. It's a different form of assessment. We would consider the loss of amenity space if it was part and parcel of the main dwelling house. That we need to consider each case on a site-by-site basis, and in this instance, the land in question does not form part of the garden. So we've assessed it on the basis of what's set out in the report.
For my Kaiser, can you just repeat that last bit? Because I didn't quite.
Yeah, we've assessed the proposal as set out in the report. That it's a separate parcel of land.
Okay, Councillor Young.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sadek?
Just on that question again, it sounds like it would affect it in terms of the impact on considerations as to amenity, but on the question about conserving green spaces and weighing that against the policy under the plans in favour of infill, would it have, if this were owned by, this is all one garden, would it be considered in the same way from the perspective of green space?
There'll be other considerations because we'd have to look at the impact on the existing amenity space that serves the main dwelling house. But the fact is it's a separate parcel of land. I mean, we fully recognise that there are conflicts within the policies themselves as biodiversity policies, as well as policies that encourage additional residential accommodation. So on balance, the assessment has been made and considered acceptable in this instance.
I just follow up on that question. So in terms of biodiversity with the green roof, what is the sort of judgment of the planning officers about whether that does sort of mean a net gain, or does it not mean a net gain? What's the final judgment on that?
Well, it does meet LP 47 because it's introducing a green roof. And like I said in my presentation, the site is constrained. There's not a lot that they can do in biodiversity terms, given the site constraints. It's very difficult on that site. So if the building was, let's say, much taller, we would require, let's say, swift boxes or something like that. But it's very constrained, or a living wall or something. So we're happy with what they're proposing. It's just the sustainability measures that needs to incorporate more into the building, which they would have to provide a carbon offset contribution for that. So,
okay, thank you. Adele?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to add something in terms of biodiversity. The site is part paved and part kind of grassed. So I think in the overall terms of impact, the site could be paved over. If it were attached to a residential property, the site could be paved over under permitted development within certain criteria, and an outbuilding could be constructed at the rear of quite a sizable size. However, given that these are flats, obviously we would obviously have to consider any new development, but it would be a similar thing. I think given the size of the site, the amount of the site that is currently paved and currently grassed, and then the amount of green roof provided, I think that balances us out in terms of meeting the policy. I think that there is a balance and that there's no net kind of loss of biodiversity because of these the mitigation measures. So we feel it's kind of addressed in that way. You can also see from the courtyard that there would be the ability to plant. There's an indicative tree planted in the courtyard that, if with the hope that that does actually happen, that will actually improve biodiversity as well. So I just wanted to mention that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Del. Any final questions from the committee? Is everyone clear on all the questions, all the issues? Someone made a judgment? Yep. Yep, okay. In that case, we'll turn myself off. In that case, we'll move to the vote. The recommendation is that planning permission be granted, subject to the conditions that are set out. All those in favour, raise your hands. Thank you. Those against? One, thank you. And those abstentions? Great, thank you very much. In that case, that passes. Thank you. Anything else, Gareth?
No.
Great, thank you very much. In that case, we've hit 8 o'clock as well. So if members want to have a swift break, if we could be back by 8:10, ready to go, that would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone.
So Mario, sorry, Chair. So Mario, obviously, how long was the break, Chair? 10 minutes. Okay. Okay. So 10.
You ready? Yeah. Right, okay. If everyone's ready, then we are good to go. Thank you. So item 6, Springdale Mews, we're being led by Gerard.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. This item relates to an approval of details of land at Springdale Mews, which is off, pardon me, it's off Springdale Road, which is again off Green Lanes, over in the west of the borough. And it's seeking approval of details of the external materials, some design details. They are seeking to discharge the green roof condition, although no green roof is being proposed. Details of contaminated land and the construction management and logistics plan. Now, before I proceed any further, I would just like to draw the members' attention to the fact that the principle of the development is not under consideration. That has already been agreed by the members. In terms of the highway, Springdale Mews itself, it's a private road over which the local planning authority and the local highway authority have no control. There has been a scheme for improvements to the highway, which has come before the members of the planning subcommittee and which have been approved and is linked to the substantial development by way of a legal agreement. Now, these are the proposed elevations of the building. They've also submitted details of window reveals and doors, and the proposed external materials are a mix of 2 different types of brick. There's a Hammersmith stock brick, which is illustrated on the screen. It's very close to the traditional London, what's known as the London stock brick, which came from the clay around the Kingsland area with quite a high chalk content. And the other brick is a Staffordshire blue engineering brick, which is a much harder brick, manufactured by Ibstock, and provides a suitable contrast with the Hammersmith stock. In terms of the roof, it's going to be standing seam zinc by VMware zinc, and the colour would be 7016, which is anthracite, which is that very dark coal coloured structure, and the windows and doors would be powder coated aluminium, again also in the anthracite colour. In terms of landscaping, there is some permeable paving that would be down at the lower ground floor level, because it's a 2-storey building, but it would be 1 storey above ground and 1 storey below ground, with some grassed areas. And this is almost quite a light touch landscaping scheme, because this is going to be in a sort of lower ground floor area. It wouldn't be visible from the public domain, and it's not really the role of the planning process to dictate how people are going to lay out their gardens and what plants to plant in them. Now, so this is the tree protection plan, but I would draw members' attention to the addendum. This element of the proposal, it has now been omitted from the application that is before the committee, and there are negotiations ongoing to ensure that a tree that is subject to a TPO would be replaced. In terms of construction management, there'd be no parking either on site or near the site for operatives. And as I pointed out earlier, Springdale Mews is a private road. And there is an area shown on the site for the storage of building materials, and also another area there for the welfare facilities, you know, like the site hut and the tea coffee making facilities. The construction management and logistics plan has been reviewed by the council's highway engineers, and from a network management point of view, there are no concerns. I do know that there have been significant representations regarding the provision of access to residential properties which are located on the west of the development site. I would point out that these also share this unadopted private roadway, and that those buildings were actually originally constructed as commercial premises at the rear of properties fronting green lanes, and any residential unit uses have not been the subject of express grants of planning permission, but have accrued immunity through the passage of time. And that is it. I haven't got any details about the contaminated land, but the submitted land science report does indicate that there is some contamination on the site, but that it can be removed prior to the development proceeding, and that is subject to a further condition that would be subject to a further submission of details regarding verification report that the land has been effectively decontaminated in accordance with the details that have been submitted. So in terms of details that have been provided, officers are of the view that the proposed external materials are of good quality, together with the design details. Just to touch on the green roof matter, there is a separate application to vary some of the conditions, to vary the approved drawings conditions, which would omit the green roof, which officers have accepted in principle. What is currently happening with that is it's subject, because it's a variation of condition, it's subject to a deed of variation to link the original legal agreement to the revised scheme, and that would omit the green roof because the slope of the roof is too great to be able to adequately support a green roof. And in terms of the construction management and logistics plan, as I've said, from a network engineering point of view, it is considered acceptable, and the application is recommended for approval.
Great, thank you very much, Gerard. We have two people here to speak in objection. We've got Hussein Hassan, and we also have Councillor Sade Ete as well. Hussein, you've got up to 5 minutes to speak, and you're welcome to start when you're
I'd
ready.
just like to touch on the point, first of all. The officer said there will be no parking, operative parking on the driveway. That's not correct. In the construction management plan, under the heading detail, indent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Initially, the existing paving, which is outside my building at 1G, will be used for operative parking. Now, so he's not being honest. Moving on, I'll just be clear. This is a driveway, unadopted private road, and the council are sanctioning a 106 agreement, necessary works to deem this project valid when the owner of that site does not own the driveway. That invalidates that 106 agreement. It's unlawful. That's my first point. Second point is sections 278 highways under the Highways Act does not exercise jurisdiction over private unadopted road. That affects public highway. So both of these points are unlawful. and improperly applied. This is challengeable at court, and they will be, these 2 points. Moving on, we haven't had sight of a daylight sunlight study. The officer himself purports to have done one 3 years ago. We've asked for it numerous times. It's never been made available. I asked for the drainage studies to be seen because now the developer proposes on installing the sewer pipe into the driveway across 40 meters of this driveway to connect into Springdale Road at a depth of 3 to 6 meters. There's no arrangements for the existing users. It's conditioned in the conditions that the existing frontages need to have arrangements for access. They're silent on this. These conditions haven't been met, and yet they're proposing this for approval. It's inappropriate, completely wrong. And we're asking this committee to reject this proposal for valid planning reasons. They just haven't met the conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sade Etty, you have up to 5 minutes as well.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of residents of Springdale Mews, and from what Hussein has said, the main objection for tonight is regarding condition 5. Condition 5, because if you look, based on what he has said, the private road, in terms of the private road, you have the Springdale Mews. That's the only road, and we have residents living at that road. At the end of the road, we have residents that have cars, and also we have those who are cyclists as well. But the main concern is in front of, if we have to look in front of, 1 minute, please. Okay, the construction vehicles and operative will be sat on the driveway outside the 2 residential buildings at 1F and 1G. There is no other exit at the end. It is only just that narrow exit. And if we look at the condition 5, indent 2, for the construction to go ahead, the applicant is required to discharge the number, frequency, and size of construction vehicles. This is still unresolved. The traffic route, the location of deliveries, and the pedestrian access arrangement, like I've said, because this definitely will interfere with the access of users and residents living on that mill. It is right in front. I was still there last night and I had conversation with residents sincerely who have concern with regards to that. And condition 5, indent 3, with regards to waste management plan, setting how resources will be managed and the waste control at all stages during the construction project, and also to show the access that will be maintained for other residents of Springdale Mill. I think this needs sincerely to be resolved. These concerns are relevant and reasonable and necessary for residents before the development can take place. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Etty. We have no one speaking in favour, I believe. So we move on to questions. So just a reminder to the committee that we're not talking about the substantive planning application, which is already gone. We're talking about the conditions, 3 materials, 4 detailed drawings, 5 construction management plan, that's just referenced, 7 contaminated land, 11 is off the agenda, so the arboricultural plan is off, 13 green roof, 16 obscure glazing. Okay, so is everyone clear on that? Questions? I have Councillor Jess Webb.
Thank you, Chair. So just to remind ourselves that the scheme is approved and it is only about the approval of these conditions. The main contention then seems to be the number 5 construction management logistics. 622, bit of a typo. So the revised construction management and logistics plan indicates it can be completed, and so the officer's recommendation is that that condition has been met. Is that because it is, and you stress the point, a private road, and therefore our role as a council is not there? We don't have that role in this condition. What we're looking at is the parking on the public highway, and really what they do on a private road is a private matter, question mark.
Well, ultimately, yeah, this is a private matter. I would draw the members' attention to there was a revised construction management logistics plan that was received today, which I appreciate that the objectors may not have had the opportunity to have sight of. However, there's no statutory obligation to consult on with neighbours on approval of details applications, and that indicates that there would be no parking for operatives within Springdale Mews itself. The CMLP already stated that there would be no parking to be used on Springdale Road, which is a street over which we do have control. In terms of providing access to the other residents, one of the people have said that there are residents further south on Springdale Mews who do use the driveway for taking a car from obviously from the roadway onto their property, and because of the width of the road, if somebody is using the road, then obviously that is denying access to other people, and there is a potential for, especially when things are being loaded and unloaded, for there be a short-term interruption to unfettered access to the highway. But this would be no different than, for example, somebody pulling up in a transit van, and other vans are available, a transit van, and delivering a parcel, say, to one of the other properties, and for other types of deliveries.
And then can I just clarify the point around whatever the point was around the road being private? I mean, the unadopted road, there's a point made by the objector around it not falling within our remit, is what I understood, but it wasn't clear.
Well, the objectors did say that the applicants don't have a stake in, as it were, in the private road, and the owner of the private road was not party to the legal agreement. That is something which is beyond my competence to respond to in this stage. And they also referred to, if I could just address these points, daylight and sunlight assessment. This was one that I had recorded on a piece of paper using a pencil and a ruler, and it was scanned into our document management system. The original was destroyed, and unfortunately that copy is no longer available due to the criminal cyber attack on Hackney Council that happened in 2020. And there was also a comment regarding challenging the decision of the council through the process of judicial review, and again, that is something which is beyond my competence to answer.
Thank you, Jared. And I was, just to confirm that daylight sunlight is not on the agenda this evening anyway, so it's not part of this application. Okay, I just want to bring in Joe to run us through. Obviously, the big contention is the access to that road and the sort of construction management plan. And Joe, I know you're online as our transport officer. I thought you might want to talk us through it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think, and thank you very much for that, Chair. I think really I would just absolutely echo the points that Gerard has made. Our network managers reviewed the construction management plan. This was obviously a condition that we put in place as part of the initial approval. And owing to the private road, we don't have jurisdiction over that because it isn't public highway, obviously. We did make, and I've been pestering Gerard quite a bit to just ensure that we really did have a very clear notification in the construction management plan that it's a private road, and we asked for a bit of goodwill, really, that we didn't want any operatives driving to and from the site. We want to encourage as many journeys by active and sustainable transport modes. But otherwise, as I say, just owing to the relatively unique nature of the private road access, we're satisfied with the construction management plan and don't have, we feel we've done what we can to control that construction process.
Thanks very much, Joe. And I suppose that's the point here, isn't it? That the application has been granted, the construction management plan is a condition that's come back. The officers think that they worked with the applicant presumably to get this construction management plan here. So that is a sort of a good thing in terms of having a construction management plan. I just wanted, for the objectors, what is your actual sort of objection to this construction management plan?
Look, he keeps reciting that they're not going to park on the driveway. But, we're talking about a site that's 25 meters fronting the driveway, 11 meters to the boundary to the other house, and they're going to go down 5 meters into the ground. 400 cubic meters of soil are coming out of there. You've got pilers going to be there. Where are they going to be? In the hole or on the driveway? They say in their construction management plan, they're going to park on the paved area. That's outside my building. Now he's offering us, it's not an undertaking, he's merely commenting that they won't be there. But I'm not going to, it's in the construction management plan. They will be on the driveway. So they're going to dig out this whole basement and they're not going to stand on the driveway. They're going to do it in the air. They're going to install a sewer pipe 6 meters into the ground over 40 meters of this driveway. Now we've got 13 frontages at the 70 meters to the far end, coming all the way up to Green Lanes. And this is in the middle. There's a human rights element. People have a right to enjoy their property and family life. Complete interruption of rights across the driveway. There's no way this can happen without blocking off that driveway completely to the residents and creating, a real issue there with, amenity, and they're not satisfying the conditions. Plus, and I may say very quickly, going back to the S106 agreement, they do not satisfy the 106 agreement legally because they're not owners of the driveway. They don't have title to the driveway. The local authority have not knowingly done this. They're being creative with the rules. They can't sanction work over the driveway under a 106 agreement for someone that doesn't have title to it. It's wrong at law.
Gerard, there's a couple of issues there. So the last one first. I mean, I don't understand the point about, so the section 106 is that essentially that the driveways, and by driveway we mean the road at the back.
Springdale Mews.
So the access roads or to the properties at the moment that will be used here, that's going to be resurfaced, isn't it, as part of the 106?
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah. And so the point is that that person doesn't own it. So what right do they have to resurface it? I presume.
Can I say something?
That has been something which was included in the legal agreement, and I'm sure my colleague from Legal Services would be able to comment that searches on the relevant land would have been done, and any title drawn up. But in terms of the planning process, the ownership of the land is. It's almost, I won't say it's immaterial, but it is not that significant. And when the original application was submitted, notice was served on all those who had title that we could find, that the applicant could find in that driveway, and certificate B on the application form was completed.
Sam?
Yeah, happy to add to that. I think it's really a case of focusing our minds really on what we're here to discuss, and that is, and I know you're sighing, but it really is. This is a question of whether a control of various conditions are acceptable, and the specific one we're talking about is whether a construction management plan is acceptable, and that contains, I mean, I think it's a very similarly named construction and traffic management plan, which itself requires various points. It needs traffic routes, location of deliveries, and if there are issues with those, they need to be identified, and that's what you question whether is acceptable or unacceptable. But you can't just look at potential underlying issues in a Section 106 agreement as a means of not approving this application. That's a separate matter that isn't really for discussion here.
Thank you, Sam. And I'll just do one more and then I'll come to the committee. Apologies. So the other point that the objector has made is that, you know, there is going to be a lot of land, a lot of soil being removed, and that will mean that vehicles are parked on the driveway, the access road, or whatever we want to call it. In terms of this construction management plan, what does that mean?
Well, it means that, well, as I explained earlier, that, you know, there would be some sort of very short-term disruption, presumably while some sort of grab lorry lifts the spoil out. It would be similar to, you know, short-term disruption. For example, if somebody were moving furniture into or out of a property. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the traffic disruption that's been caused by G Network putting in their fibre optic broadband in the highways of Hackney and other areas. It would represent a short-term disruption, but in terms of the scale of that, you know, if one examines, you know, in the bigger picture, it would be small scale, and because the alternative would be for the operatives, for example, to have to, you know, take the waste out in a wheelbarrow or something to load up on the street Ispringdale Road, which would be presumably less acceptable.
Great. Hands up for questions. So I just have an idea. Councillor Sadek, Councillor Young, Councillor Potter. Councillor Sadek first.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got three questions all about the construction management plan. The first one is, you mentioned that you'd received a revised plan today. I think I heard you say. Are you satisfied, given the limited time you had, that you've been able to? I think it says you need to consider it and approve it and so on. How extensive was that, and have you had time in the space of a day to do that? The second is, I just wondered whether that's something that would normally not be shared with members of the planning committee to make a decision on that. And then the third point is just to say that in the consideration section at 6.2.2, council talks about the plan indicating that the development can be completed without compromising safety or parking on the public highway. So that's two factors. I think the condition 5 requirement at 6.1.4 talks about several other issues: noise control, air quality, waste management, and other factors relevant to avoided hazard and obstruction. So I guess my question on that last bit is, have you sort of concluded that because it's a private road, those issues are irrelevant to essentially approving the plan, because on the bit that you do have jurisdiction over, they're irrelevant to sort of that area? Or is it just that you've chosen in the summary at 6.2.2 only to touch on 2 of several issues that are required under condition 5?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. In terms of the revised construction management logistics plan, it was actually a very minor revision to the previous document, and this document was shared with our network and transportation colleagues who were able to review the revision, and it's really commenting on the revision. So yes, that did give us sufficient time. In terms of that being shared with the members of the planning committee, I do know that I shared the document with our governance services officer and the chair, so that it is available. I can also say that the document is available on the planning website. I did that myself. In terms of noise and other activity, then yes, those do form part of the construction management logistics plan. And hours of operation and things like that, they're all very crucial. In terms of noisy construction activity, that is controlled also by environmental protection legislation, other legislation that says that you can't have noisy building works outside of, I think it's 8 AM to 6 PM, Monday to Friday, and up until 1 o'clock on a Saturday with no noisy construction activity. And I hope that answers your questions, Councillor.
Well, I suppose it's just that aside from those other regulations that you talked to on noise control, within condition 5, there are requirements about, I think I listed noise control, air quality, waste management, but then the sort of summary considerations you give on condition 5, unless I'm missing something in that 6.2 block of considerations, only speak to 2 of those several issues. So I just wondered if, in the absence of doing so in the written report, you're able to confirm that you are satisfied across the board and not just in relation to the 2 points that are written.
Well, yes, and in terms of air quality, that is, we do seek to ensure that any non-road mobile machinery is of low emission quality, which they've demonstrated that it would be. Just sorry, I've forgotten the second part of that, Councillor.
So the 3 I listed were noise control, air quality, and waste management. But I think there are other things. There were just 3 that I picked out.
Yes, well, in terms of waste management, they have said that any waste materials would be stored within the pink area on the site, before being taken away for disposal through an authorised facility.
If I could just briefly add in, so that the construction management plan has been reviewed by 2 colleagues in our network management team, one of whom is the manager of that team. Obviously, it is a plan, and as we discussed, it doesn't form part of the original approval. The application has been approved, but based on the details submitted to us, the plan is satisfactory, and that will include a number of the details that you mentioned around things like air quality. From our understanding, it's a satisfactory plan. If there was a deviation from the plan, then obviously that's something that we could monitor, or potentially, as Gerard touched on, environmental protection could look at that. But certainly the plan is satisfactory. And just to sort of loop back, Councillor, to the original question, the only amendments we required were to update the fact that this is a private road, and in other words, we don't have specific jurisdiction over it, and to ensure that there was no operative parking. In a sense, on the operative parking, we were really looking for a bit of goodwill there. Obviously, it's not public highway, but it really doesn't accord with the council's aims or objectives to have operatives driving to the site. I hope that helps to clarify.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Young, I think said, next.
I just want to get a little bit more into the detail of the construction management plan. I feel a bit odd that we haven't got it here, so we can't refer to it. So I don't know. So when you say you're satisfied that it's all good, it just would be good to know a bit more detail about it, about what's good about it and how it meets the concerns of residents. So when the resident says there is no way that the truck can can sit there and carry out the drilling into the ground and lift the soil out of the ground, for example, without that truck sitting blocking their access and egress from their homes with vehicles. If as I understand it, that's the question. That's the problem. Is that right? And I know you say there would be temporary interruption to access, but this is not the same as somebody dropping off a parcel. So when you drill into the ground and take out a lot of soil, it takes a lot longer than dropping off a parcel. So it would be good to know how long the road is likely to be blocked for, and what does acceptable mean. If I had to take my granny to the hospital and I couldn't get her to the hospital within a reasonable period because of my road being blocked for 4 hours, I wouldn't think that was reasonable. So I just want to know a bit more detail about how long will the road be blocked for according to the management plan, how often will those blockages take place, and what are the arrangements to make sure that residents can get in and out, or at least know when they won't be able to get in and out.
I think this is a specialist area that my colleague, Mr. Croft, would be better able to answer.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor. I think the challenge we have here is that this is a private access road, and so we've made clear that we don't have jurisdiction over the road. We've assessed the construction management plan, and from our perspective, linked into the original determination, this is a satisfactory plan, and our network managers are satisfied that the construction can be carried out in a safe and compliant manner. I understand very much that you're asking, a number of kind of intricacies about the kind of construction process, but I'm not able to sort of give that information here. I think potentially we could look at the construction plan that's available on the portal, but certainly we are satisfied that the construction can be carried out in adherence to the relative kind of policies, but crucially on a private private road, obviously we don't have jurisdiction.
So can I ask a bit about the jurisdiction question? I think what I don't understand about that is we don't have jurisdiction over what happens on that road, but presumably that doesn't necessarily mean we don't have jurisdiction to decide whether we lift or don't lift our condition. It's a slightly technical legal question, but I'd be really grateful for a bit of advice on. So we're being asked whether we want to lift this condition. If I think that the management plan, insofar as I understand it, doesn't let people in and out of their homes with their vehicles, I'm not going to lift the condition. So I do have jurisdiction. We do have jurisdiction to make that decision, don't we?
I think, and certainly this wouldn't be an area for me to elaborate on, because I think we're going into sort of legal terrain and that kind of thing. The condition was recommended by Transport and Highways teams, and that was set by the planning department as part of the determination. Obviously, it's then come to the subcommittee for you to understand that kind of process to discharge the condition. And we've outlined that it's satisfactory and it meets the requirements of the network managers at the council, but we have emphasised it's a private road. In terms of things like access and egress, as you mentioned, we're satisfied that the construction can be carried out in a compliant manner during sort of daylight hours, as noted in the construction management plan. And as Gerard has highlighted, whilst there will be a level of disruption, which you would imagine with any construction, we're satisfied that can be managed appropriately.
Sam, can I just bring you in again? Sorry, because I think we've been slightly derailed by this road again.
Sure. again, I think we're talking quite generally at the moment. So you have roads and you can have public highways, and a highway is something along which the public can pass and repass. And then you can have things that aren't highways that the public can't pass over. So I can't comment now on what this private road is, whether it's a public highway along which the public have a right to pass and not repass, or whether it's a private road which effectively allows the landowners to exclude people from it. Now, when we talk about jurisdiction, there is another level of complication, if you like, on top of that, so that some public highways can be maintained privately. So they can be, you can dig into them, only the owner of the land effectively can dig into it. Whereas some highways are adopted by the highway authority, the Hackney or TfL in certain circumstances, but more likely Hackney here. And they then have the jurisdiction, if you like, to dig into that highway. So I think perhaps for your benefit, it might be quite helpful to just for it to be explained what exactly is going to be done on this private road. Is it vehicles are just going to go up and down it? Is there going to be parking on it? What actually is on it, and what level of disruption will there be? And that isn't really clear on it.
Our jurisdiction is over the construction management plan, wherever it's going to be implemented, right? So we've got the construction management plan, it's on the portal. I think for us, it's conditioned that there is a construction management plan. So tick, there is a construction management plan. Second, are we confident, or certainly are the officers confident? Are we confident, the officers confident that that is the best that construction management plan can do, or do there need to be any amendments? Are we happy with it? Are we not happy with it? I think is the question that we are assessing this evening alongside the others.
Yes, but on the rights of way question, if this is a private road and the residents have easements over it, they have rights of access, private rights of access. So not the public has access or doesn't have access. These people who are owners of their land, in order to get in and out of their properties, do have rights of access over it, and those are going to be interrupted by the way the construction's carried out. Is that something we can take into account?
I think also the assumption there is that the residents own the road.
Sorry, I'd be careful here about, you're not here to determine whether this is a private road. You're not here to determine who has rights to access this road. You're here to determine the planning merits, if you like, of whether this condition, or not the planning merits, you're here to determine whether what has been submitted is acceptable. If it turns out there are separate legal issues as to who has access to this road, then that can be a matter picked up by whomever at whatever point in the future. But it's not really for you to act as the arbiters of who owns that road. You're here to say.
So do we think that this construction management plan works or does not work? Sorry, Councillor, did you have the specific? Would you mind, or shall I? Councillor. Okay, you, and then I'll bring in Councillor Sadek.
No, it's just a slight comment on parking. Certainly,
But is this, I suppose, Gerard or Sam, the point of the construction management plan is that that is what they're going to sort of deliver, rather than, without a construction management plan, do what you like, right? So, I don't understand why you would want it changing on the basis you don't think they will.
I don't think we're being told that it will. That's what they're saying. I don't think
Do we not want them to not attend by sustainable?
Well, I think we're saying that I'm not saying it.
So probably Joe, actually, isn't it? Who may be frozen.
So if I could
Oh,
just
no, it's not.
come in there about operatives, needing to take tools and what have you onto the site. I fully agree. They do. And for a while, I used to travel over to Marble Arch to get a sort of 10 to 7 a.m. coach. And I would be sitting on the underground and there'd be building operatives laden with tools and other accoutrements of their profession, getting to central London building sites. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that this could happen with this particular site.
My understanding is that this is now generally part of construction management plans as well. I know it's certainly been the case on Colville, which is they do not, on the Colville regeneration estate, part of the construction management plan was that they did not, that the operatives did not drive into the area to park, and certainly didn't park on the estate and things like that. So it was a sort of car-free sort of development as well. But is this generally part of our construction management plans now, or specific to this one?
Well, I think my colleague, Mr. Croft, possibly be better able to answer that. But yes, it is. Hackney Council, our planning and transport policies seek to drive down car use and dependence on the private car. Now, for some matters, for example, moving materials and what have you. For example, a cement mixer, you can't really take that on the bus. But many of the tools that are used in construction, especially on small sites such as this, are highly portable. And so, the operatives wouldn't necessarily need to pack those into a vehicle in order to transport them to site. What would be required would be, for example, heavy machinery, for example, excavating the site would involve, for example, a mini digger that would be taken in on the trailer and then driven up the site and parked within the site on the pink area shown on the drawing. So, I think this is feasible.
Did so bring in Councillor Sadek, but I'll come to you, Councillor Young.
Yeah, it's just on that point around jurisdiction. So just to make sure to help us clarify exactly what we're able to take into account and what we're not able to take into account and decide on that point. Condition 5, I think, as you put it, Chair, sets out a number of criteria that we need to be, or the council needs to be satisfied as to, regardless of where those particular things are taking place on public land that falls under the jurisdiction of the council or on private roads that's an offshoot from a public roads. I just want to be clear that considerations as to the impact of the works on private land, we're permitted to, they're relevant considerations for the purpose of our decision. Is that, is my understanding correct?
What the members are being asked to decide is whether they consider that the details and the level of information that has been supplied within the construction management logistics plan is sufficient to allow the condition to be discharged. And that does include a number of considerations. And in terms of our network and transportation officers, their jurisdiction expires at the end of the highway. However, as a local planning authority, we can take other factors into consideration. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
It's our job to make sure to work out whether we think this is all right or whether it needs changing, right?
So, I'm looking at the construction management plan on my phone now for the first time. Is that right? Have we been sent it earlier today?
It's on the planning portal, so it's no. So I read it.
Okay, but so the papers that I've read are the ones that were sent to me in advance, and then anything that was here. I haven't looked again at the planning portal today. I just sort of want to be clear about that. So I'm now looking at the construction management plan, and I don't know, I haven't read it properly.
Just to briefly come up on that point. So the construction management plan I know has been on the portal for a number of months. I just want to really stress that we did ask for some minor amendments just about the operatives driving to the site crucially using their own private vehicles, and obviously just the private road, but the actual form and structure of everything else in the construction management plan we deemed as satisfactory. I think it was back in early August, so it's not as if there's been recent significant changes.
Thank you. So
I'm going to make a suggestion. I think this is a construction management plan that it's really better that we don't read it during the committee. So I think we also don't have the applicant here to answer any questions, so we are just going on officer time. So I suggest that if the committee is in agreement, we should defer this until a future committee meeting, get the applicant here so that they can answer questions well as they should be, and then make sure that the detail is in the report as well, so it's not separate on the planning portal. Does that make sense? People broadly, you can murmur your agreement or dissent on that, and that would be nods, not nods. Nods. Okay, great. So do we need to take a vote on deferring, or do we need? Gerard. Or even Sam, sorry.
Is the question a procedural one as to how we can vote to defer? I think what we've done at previous meetings that we seem to be content with is that we'll just one of you will propose a new motion, or will be seconded, that we're going to defer this item until the next meeting, so that additional information can be provided, and we won't vote on the recommendation.
Right, thank you. And then Gerard, do you have something you want to say?
No, I have nothing to add.
Right, okay.
I mean, we don't have a time constraint. There's not something that this needs to be decided. This is not the last.
Well, if the applicant had a time constraint, then they should have been here.
I mean, I'm absolutely in favour of deferring, because I think it's absolutely shocking that the applicant isn't here to answer the questions.
It's not for us, really, is it?
They were invited to put themselves forward, is all I will say.
Yeah, fine. Could someone propose thank you, Councillor Webb.
To move that we, motion that we defer this.
Great.
To future
Thank you.
meetings.
Seconder?
I second.
Seconded, Councillor Young. Great. And then are we all in agreement with that? Yeah. General, does anyone want to dissent at all? No? Okay, fine. Great. Okay, deferred then in that case. Thank you. We can get the applicant here, and then let's just get the detail to the report. Okay, we have agenda item 7, final substantive one. Gerard is leading on this as well, which is Windus Road and another details. Oh, lovely.
For the record, I am now handing, for anybody watching the meeting, I'm handing over a sample of materials to the councillors to examine briefly.
Yes.
Once they're over, feel free to start. That's fine.
Yes, if I could quickly just make a brief presentation while the samples are being handed around. Now this is a development at number 7 to 10. Sorry.
Sorry, everyone, can one person take the bricks and then maybe pass them around and not discuss them? Thank you. This is why Gareth wants a table in the middle of the room. This is.
If I'd done beforehand, I would have.
Yeah, okay, I think so. The bricks are what we're discussing. Sorry, Gerard. They got very excited by the bricks.
No, that's fine, councillor. It's actually, sometimes it can be very helpful to have the physical samples. Okay, this is a site on 10 to 20 Windus Road, which is on the south side of Windus Road, near the junction with Stamford Hill. It was previously occupied by a single-storey commercial building, and a planning application was approved in 2020, I believe, for the redevelopment of the site to provide a single story of commercial floor space at ground floor with a partial basement, and then with 9 residential units above. Now, when the original planning permission was granted, it was granted at the planning subcommittee, and the members requested that details of the external materials be submitted for approval by the members. Just to, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum in which we have received some revised drawings which reinstate what had been previously approved, which was the soldier course above the ground floor. Even on the parts of the building that are going to be rendered, you can't really see too clearly on the screen, but going from left to right, you've got brick at the ground floor, brick soldier course above, and then moving from left to right, you've got render brick, with standing seam zinc on the mansards, which just demonstrate slightly clearer on my screen. Again, at the rear elevation, you've got moving from left to right as you're looking at it. We have render brick, and again with standing seam zinc. And again on the side elevation, this is a rendered side. In terms of the bricks, this is a screen grab of the brick, the sample of which you have now had the opportunity to view. It's a BEA Majestic. It's as you can see, it's a fairly good quality brick that's, I won't say it's in keeping with the pattern of development in the area, because there is no real pattern of development in the area. There's a real mix of different building types, ages and designs, but it's a high quality material and we're happy. Our design officers are happy with that. And this is just a couple of examples of the window and roof colour, which again would be the RAL 7016 anthracite, which I mentioned previously. Powder coated aluminium. And just as an example of the building that's being replaced, that's the building that's current, or that was previously on site. I believe it's now been demolished. As you can see, it's finished in a fairly standard sort of 1950s wire cut red brick. In terms of the external materials, these have been reviewed by our specialist conservation and design officers. We did request that the soldier course be reintroduced as in accordance with the original approved drawings, and this has been done, and the application is recommended for approval.
Great, thank you very much. We've got no other speakers. You'll be delighted here. So, in summary, the bricks are good quality, and the zinc is good quality, the materials are good quality, and they're what you would expect or we would want to see. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Do you have questions about the bricks? Of course you do, Councillor Young. No, kidding.
Was this conditioned because there were objections to the building materials before, or was it just a standard condition?
Well, this is a standard condition that's used in the original submission. The submitted drawings just said brick, and that could mean any kind of brick. And so, if somebody, unless the materials are specified on the original submission, then for a building of this scale, then yes, we would require that those details be brought back to the local planning authority for consideration.
Other questions? No? Speak now, or whoever holds your peace. No? Okay, nothing else from me in that case either. So the recommendation is, what's the recommendation? That details pursuant to conditions 3, attached to Planning Commission 216-0466 dated 15th June 2020 be approved. All those in favour, raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gerard. You've done a few this evening, so thanks everyone else. But we're not finished yet. We've got delegated decisions. I noted that the Councillor Webb.
Chair, just the query. I know Councillor Young will ask that we had a concern about last delegated decisions in the agenda, and they were a complete mess. But as in clearly, you know, have you been provided with those? I'm afraid I haven't gotten to check that we are looking at the same list. Or this is.
I haven't seen them. No.
As soon as I get them, I can put them on the website.
Yeah. So they need to come back. We didn't,
come back.
Because we couldn't.
These ones are right though.
Yeah, these ones are right. These are in the correct wards as. Yeah, it was the. Do you remember? Yes. So that. So at the last meeting, the delegated decisions were incorrect. Clearly, there had been a problem with the ward allocation, and they were incorrectly allocated, and so they didn't make. They weren't correct. And so I think the request was that we had them corrected and stuck on this agenda.
Because I think we do technically need to.
We'll bring them to the next meeting.
Okay, so there'll be 2 sets of delegates.
Yeah.
One older.
But is everyone happy to note these ones?
Yes,
Note,
noting these ones.
Councillor, you've got a comment?
I'm just saying
that 83. It's the blue page. Right, okay. So it might be a boundary issue that we're not. Gareth, can you?
Yeah, I've noted it and I've got it on the recording, so I'll check that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other than that, are we happy to note them? Great, thank you very much. Any of the business? I did not receive any. And then the next planning committee dates are probably, it's worth pointing out that the obviously the next one is 28th September, which those of us who are going to Labour Party conference will be very well refreshed when we arrive back straight into that. And then 19th of October is a new meeting for a pre-app meeting. So pre-application meeting, which I think will be the first one for many people on this committee. So it'll be useful to come along to that if you possibly can. Otherwise, 2nd of November, 7th of December.
Chair, just to clarify, just for that meeting as well, I know it's some time off. That one, the 19th of October meeting will be held in the room across from this one, and it'll be starting in the later time of 7 o'clock.
And that's because we need to fit it in somewhere, basically.
Yes, you've all been. You've been sent the calendar invite.
One of the few committees where the calendar invitations do actually go in from the committee, so it's helpful. I think that's it in that case. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, officers. Thank you, everyone online, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Cheers.